Right, we are in the Ross-on-Wye countryside and we've come to see a car we spotted on eBay. Land Rover Discovery 1, 1990 G-Reg, 1989-90. I'm not sure exactly when it is, but it's one of the first two-door or three-door, we always have this debate, Land Rovers. Now, we're going to talk about a little bit about the history and the significance. Was it the most important car in terms of saving Land Rover? We're going to look at the exterior design. We're going to look at the interior design. We are going to have a look around this actual car. It is for sale on eBay. It finishes tomorrow. I'll try and get this up tonight, Saturday night. This car finishes tomorrow on Sunday. Maybe it's a project you'd like to undertake. We'll do a quick tour of the condition. We've also brought the Stig along. You can see the Stig there hiding behind. I was trying to work out what relative, because this isn't the Stig's granddad, is it? Because that would be the original Defender. This is a sort of like, it's like the strange uncle on the other side of the family, because it is part of Land Rover, but it's not the direct descendant. So there we go, we're going to have a look. So this vehicle was launched in September 1989. So I was just a young 19-year-old then. Now, it was a really significant model for Land Rover. So up until this point, Land Rover really only had two main model streams. They've got the Defender. Now, okay, it had gone from the Series 1, 2, 3 Defender, and they had short wheelbase, long wheelbase, and all the derivatives. But they had the Defender range, and they'd had the Range Rover range, the Range Rover Classic as we know it now, that was launched as a three-door in 1970. It was now 19 years old, the Range Rover Classic. Still a popular car in its five-door version. But Land Rover were getting a lot of competition from Mitsubishi and Toyota, bringing in lower cost 4x4s into the market, and they had to do something. So they decided to launch a new model that sat between Defender, which was, as we know, they're a bit rattly, aren't they, George? They're kind of, and they're lovely, but they're very utilitarian. And the customers were still more of the farmer type market at that time. And then they had the Range Rover, which was more of a almost upper class family 4x4. And they were selling well into the Middle East and stuff, but they needed something for the domestic market that sat in between the two. So they came up with the Discovery. They had some other names, and I'll mention those at the end. But the Discovery was the name they plumped for. And what they did was they took the Range Rover chassis and suspension and everything, and they plumped a new body on it. And the trick was to try and save cost. So this is what the first models they launched were three-door, because they didn't want to compete with themselves. They didn't want to have a five-door Discovery competing against a five-door Range Rover. So they sort of tried to launch this, and also it reduced the cost because you didn't need to make five doors and all the other bits. So it was a cheaper way of making the car, making it more competitive to launch it, which was a pretty cool idea. So this was the third model. So it was the first new model in 19 years, and it was only the third model. So Land Rover then had three models they could sell. You could sell your Defender, now the Discovery, and the Range Rover, and they sat, and you could see where they all sat. Now, I was reflecting, I mean, now Land Rover have got 7 models. So you've got the Defender, the Evoque, the Velar, the Discovery Sport, the Discovery, the Range Rover Sport, the Range Rover. And clearly the Range Rover sits at the top, and clearly the Defender sits there, and the Evoque is a good compact 4x4. But there's a lot of models in the range now. Point for discussion. So this was the third model. So you got a clear structure of what was what. And so when we look round the car, you've got to think that it was aimed to reduce costs. So you won't see any wood or leather in this Discovery. It's very much plastic and cheaper, lower cost materials, although it also gives it a contemporary look if you wind the clock back to 1989, at least. Right, so that's the sort of history of the car. Now let's have a look at the exterior. Right, we're just about to do the exterior tour. George is going, why are all the flies on the Stig? What's going on? Go on. Shoot. Anyway, right, we're talking about this car. So it was launched as a three-door, but very soon afterwards, the five-door came, and they also launched it in a van version. So that's your body styles there, three-door van and five-door. And by the mid-1990s, the Discovery was such a success, it accounted for over half of Land Rover's sales. So it had overtaken the Defender and the Range Rover put together. So it was a real success. So very classic. You've got this clamshell bonnet, well, at least the front, the square front, the blunt edge, almost a bit of a hark back to the Defender styling. You've got the big plastic bumpers. Now, one thing to note is that the Discovery 1 was never sold in the US. So if you're watching this in the US, you never got those, and we'll go on to the reasons for that later. So right, we've got the Range Rover chassis, so we've got the Range Rover axles, we've got the Range Rover suspension, so this is coil sprung, and these are the original steel wheels fitted to the first Land Rover Discoveries. Now, they didn't want to put alloys on because alloys would look flash and groovy, and that was more the domain for the Range Rover. So these are very functional, rugged, tough steel wheels. Interesting, we've chose the steel wheels, haven't we, George, on the Stig, because that's what we wanted, tough, rugged. There we go. So there's the, now one iconic thing of the Discovery is this hunched roof. Now, it gave several features. The people sat in the back could sit a little higher and look over the heads. It was a sort of stadium seating. But also, apparently, the Range Rover had quite a high fuel tank. So it meant the seats went higher. But actually, it was quite a popular feature because it made for a light and spacious interior. So this classic hump. And also, they took the Safari windows from the Defender. And also interesting, we've got those on our new Defender as well. And this has been part of the design all the way through. And the rear door is an opening one. So you think about this, we've got the Defender. Now, the Defender obviously had the opening door at the rear with the spare wheel mounted on the back. But the Range Rover had the split tailgate. You had the boop, boop, which obviously is interesting that the Discovery 1s and 2s had the opening side door, which we've also got on our new Defender. So that is a similarity there we can see. But when the Discovery 3 came out, now I'm a big fan of the Discovery 3 and 4 split tailgate, but at the time you can see this was a cheaper option than having the two tailgates and all the mechanisms. Now, the other interesting thing that I'd never really noticed before until I started to think about it is you see how this window, and you may have to come around a bit, George, this window is not a standard sort of uniform shape. It's asymmetric. It comes down lower here, and obviously they continued that design through onto the Discovery 3 and Discovery 4. And I guess the reason for it is it lets more light into the car and it gives you better visibility. It lowers this rear viewpoint here down further. So we've got the spare wheel on the back, we've got the offset number plate, the classic design. Now, this is quite different to the Defender because the Defender has the number plate on the side. And what this gives you is a really big, wide rear door. Psh, who doesn't like a wide rear door? Look at that. It's actually massive. Now, what we'll do, we will get the tape measure out and we will measure how wide this is compared to the Stig's rear door. Right, so if we just measure here, let's go to the smallest point. We have got about 46 inches there. Let's have a look how wide the Stig is. Ignore my rubbish in the back. The Stig is about 39 inches. So see how I went inches there for the guys in America. Right, so there we go. So it's got a massive, I reckon you could get a pallet in this one. Definitely. And the seats fold down. Now, one thing that was quite advanced at the time was you had the split seats. You got the sort of 60-40 split rear seat. So you could have one passenger and some luggage, or two passengers and a thin luggage. Right, so we've got the rear. Here's another interesting I've not, look, George, something that was missing on our Defender and the Discovery and the Discovery 4 was you could release from inside, an internal tailgate release. Cool feature, we like that. Right, so here we go. So we've got heated windows. These are all the rage. Look, we've got heated rear window. We've got rear wash wipe. So again, these are things you didn't have on the Defender. You had them on the Range Rover, but where they wanted it to sit in the middle, it had to have some of these extra convenience features. Now, the rear bumper on this one has been replaced. The rear lights. Now, the rear lights are interesting, George. Right, one problem with the Discovery 1 rear lights was that when you indicate it, it's this light that flashes. I've put the hazards on, which was great. But when you come over to the other side, if you've broken down, the rear door opens so wide and the spare wheel blocked the view. And then on the Discovery 2, the indicators went to the bottom. I'm sure that's something to do with it. So there we go. So there's the rear. Now, these rear lights are apparently stolen from a Maestro van. They may even have, look, they've got Austin. They've got the Austin, not the Land Rover. You see this little logo here. So these are actually stolen from a Maestro van. And there are other various parts stolen from different cars. Right, so there's the exterior design, just a quick overview. Now let's start to have a look at the interior. So the first cars were pretty much all in this blue colour. So the interior was designed by Sir Conran, and he had a design consultancy, and his consultancy was tasked with designing the interior and to design a modern looking, and they were told to ignore all previous interiors and come up with some new stuff. So as we said, there's no leather, so you'll see they've used a lot of sort of vinyl and plastics, but this is quite a nice, it's somewhat dog hairy, but this is a sort of almost like a tweed-esque material that they fitted in here. And one thing they made a point about was they wanted to make it more tactile. So these door grabs are sort of ribbed for extra sensuality, look. So as you touched it, I guess they've also got a practical thing as well. If you've got wet gloves and you've been in the field, I guess they're less slippy or something as well. So that's quite cool. We like that grippiness. So you'll see the interior, but again, it's not as utilitarian as a Defender. We haven't got, you know, we do have a carpeted floor. We do have carpeted backs of the seats. We don't have a lot of exposed metal on the inside. In fact, it's very limited. There's more on my Defender, I would say. All the interior surfaces are covered. Right, we've already spoken about the seats, but I will just demonstrate how versatile the seats were. So that gave you a complete loading platform all the way through. Look at that carpet, it's like new there, George. That bit at least. Right, but we'll do a review of the car later in terms of what needs to be looked at on this particular vehicle and what's good and bad. But you could see you would have, with all the seats folded down, you would have a great loading space. Right, I'm just reading the travel supplement from 2011. Right, oh, finished with that. Let me just put it in this handy little magazine newspaper rack. Look at this, they thought of everything. We've got interior lights at the back. We've got these cunning little magazine map holders. Can you see those there, George? Right, and the other thing you'll notice is we've got opening rear windows, but to keep the cost down, they haven't got all the window mechanisms. We've got electric windows in the front. Well, look at that. So they've got the old classic mini style opening rear windows just to let a bit of ventilation in. These are actually quite good because if you wanted to leave your dog in the car, you could leave the windows open, but it wasn't enough for anyone to steal anything out your car. So some people like those. There we go. Right, what else have we got? So we've got magazine holders at the front. Look, they'd really thought about this as a lifestyle vehicle. So this wasn't so much a luxury vehicle, it wasn't a utility vehicle, it was supposed to be for the family to enjoy outings out. Very much part of the Land Rover thing, and I guess the Discovery name and discovering places is all part of the thing. They had these hand grabs built into the seat so that the rear passengers could hold on as you went on your adventures. And then you've got this almost velvet-like suede material. You've got map pockets here. Now, obviously being a 3-door, access into the rear. Now, one thing you'll note is that the transmission tunnel here is virtually non-existent. We've got a really good flat 4. And so it was a 3-seater at the back. And there's actually quite good rear room in this. It's very light and airy. The interior at the back here, I've got my magazines. I'm 6 foot tall. We've got the magazines. I've got my lights. I've got everything I need here. Big windows, everything looks good. We've got perfect view. We're slightly higher than the front seat so we can see out. Great interior. We've got big here. Now, so here, now our one, we had one, and it did have this, it had a bag that clipped in here, and it was made of the same fabric, and you could take it out and use it as a cool bag or a handbag, and it was really good. And they're now really valuable. If you find one of the original bags in this material, the material the same as that sort of tartan, it's this side material, George, you'll see on the side and on the door card, and it had a little, and we used to have one of those in our car. I should have taken it out. And you'll notice this model doesn't have the sunroof, so they did do a version with twin sunroofs, and you can actually remove the sunroof. And apparently another thing, they came with bags for the sunroof so that you could put the sunroof out and enjoy more sunshine and stuff. And apparently the bags now are also really rare. So the access to the rear was quite good. You could access this both from the front and from the rear. So the rear seats give up and access is quite good. Right, let's look at this. We've got the days when smoking was all the rage, look. But look at this one in the back. This is super flash. Come around and join us, George. So this is the rear ashtray. Now check this out for a mechanism. Look, as it spins, look, it's closed, so all the ash doesn't, and then when it fully opens, look, it pops open. Gosh, look at that, that's magical. It doesn't quite close quite so easily. Oh, I don't want to break it. There you go. Look. Wow, look at that. Cunning design, cunning design. Map pockets in the rear, so you've got lots of storage here. You've got storage pockets in the side here. Right, let's jump in the front. Right, here we are, sat in the front of the car. We've got this big, useful, well laid out center console, and it's very similar to what we've got in the new Defender. And obviously, if we had our bag in here with everything. The handbrake is interesting. The handbrake doesn't work on the rear shoes. It actually locks the transmission, which is a really useful and less complicated thing. You've got less cabling, less mechanisms on your rear handbrake. Those of you that have done the Discovery 3 and Discovery 4 handbrakes will wish you had one of these. So this was a proper four-wheel drive car. It wasn't just a soft roader. This has got the high and low ratio gearboxes. So you've effectively got, so this is the manual with the 5-speed gearbox. They did do an automatic version as well, but not at the start. So we got 5-speed. So you effectively got 10 speeds with the high and low ratio. And you've also got a center diff lock. So you could lock the center diff. So this car doesn't have ABS. So we haven't got a center diff lock on the Defender. And so what the car uses is the ABS. So if it sees one wheel spinning, it locks that wheel, so the drive is automatically transferred to the other wheel. But in the days before ABS, the diff lock was actually more essential. So this car doesn't have an airbag. Look at this. So we have no airbag in this steering wheel. We have no passenger airbag. We have no driver's airbag. And this is one of the reasons that they didn't sell the Discovery 1 into the US, because the US regulations at the time dictated that you needed to have airbags fitted. So look at these futuristic clocks, but they weren't really, because they were stolen from another model. So those of you that had an Austin Metro will recognize they're very similar. I think they actually came out of a Maestro. Someone will correct me in the comments. You can see they've got this classic design with the bar going all the way across. We've got the front grab handle, again textured so you get a better grip. We've already talked about that. We've got sun visors, we've got cloth headlining, the pillars are trimmed down here, no exposed, look, the doors have no exposed metal. So it had to be more luxurious than the Defender. We've got a stereo system. Apparently some of them had a remote control stereo, and it was one of the first cars where you could control the stereo from the steering wheel, but I'm not seeing where that is. Cigarette light, look, a clock, look at that. We've got, does that work, George?
Yeah, I think so.
Look at that. Goes 10:23. Look at that. This was an interesting thing we spotted earlier, wasn't it, George? We spotted the pedals. I don't know if you can reach across and see. Look at the pedals. They've got an R and an R in them. And I suspect that's clearly from Range Rover. So it had the Range Rover pedal. So you can see on these cars, there's telltale signs of its heritage, where the bits have come from. So we've got no glove box, but we've got a tray. Well, I always like looking at what people have got. So there we go. So that's the tour of the interior done. Right, let's have a look under the inside, because one thing we haven't talked about much is the engine. So this was a new car. They designed the new body, but yes, they'd reused a lot of bits and the suspension and everything, but they'd actually at the same time designed a new engine. So this is a 2.5 litre 4-cylinder diesel engine, and this was new. It had direct diesel injection, which improved the performance. It's got a turbocharge, it's got an intercooler, and it was great. Okay, it's not going to set the world on fire. It wasn't, but it was good for fuel economy, which meant it was good for the target market. Not only was it cheaper to buy, it was cheaper to run than the Range Rover. Now, they did do the V8 version of the Discovery 1 for export markets primarily, that had the V8 from the Range Rover, but the 200 TDI engine went on, and this actually went in later into the Defender. So they developed it for the Discovery, but apparently they detuned it for the Defender, because the Discovery, being a bigger car, needed more power. So the engine was really good, and it lasted for a good few years before they went over to the 300 TDI. Now, the Discovery 1 we had, by the time we got it, it had 250,000 miles on it, 250,000 miles. So these engines are well renowned for being easy to repair, reliable, robust engines if looked after. So not only was it a new body, it was a new engine, and that was You know, was this model the model that saved Land Rover? I think it was. I think had they not had the Discovery, if they'd have kept to the luxurious, just had Range Rover and Defender, I don't think they would have been able to gain that middle ground that they needed to have the economy of scale to keep going and become the successful company they are today. Right, that's enough of a history lesson and a look round. Let's look at this particular car. Let's talk about, is a Discovery 1 a good investment? Is it going to go up in value? Well, right now, money in the bank is not doing anything. Probably a classic car like this is. So what should you look at? Is this one worth buying? Is it worth bidding on? I can't answer it exactly, but I'll give you some things to think about. So we will start the engine in a minute, but the parts for the engines are readily available. So don't get too worried if I mean, they'll all sound like they're knocking because it's the diesel engines of the era. But don't worry too much because all the parts are cheap and available because they were used on the Defenders. There's plenty of supply for the parts for that. The bodywork will be more crucial. Right, so look at the plastics. Are the plastics intact? Is there any signs of rot? There is some surface rust around here. You can see in the corners we have got some surface rust on the wings where the road dirt is spread up around the wheel arches. So check that. Now this one's clearly very original. As we look round, it's got all the markers, the maker's plates, the original symbols. This all looks original. It doesn't look like it's had any crash damage over the years. It's got the original headlights, all with the original adjusters. These adjusters, it's things like this that can snap off. That's good. You can see here there's more significant rust in this wheel arch. Now I did think I saw there's a guy on eBay that's remade some of the panels for these. I forget what they're called, like PJI products or something. But if you look, you can buy some of the panels. This one's got its original headline. Now, one thing that is very rare to find on some of these older models is the original graphics. Now I'll put a screenshot up. I thought I'd look on the parts catalogue and see if these graphics are still available from Land Rover. So I found the part number for them. Check out the price. I think there's like 6 parts that make the graphic, and I think one of the parts alone was, I don't know if it's a mistake or what, I haven't faked it. It was like £4,000. So yeah, if you lose your graphics, so when you paint the car, before you go to one of these and go, I'm just going to paint it all and make it all look modern and it'll be worth loads of money, just think about what you're going to do to replace these graphics. I'm sure they can be replaced or remanufactured, but you don't want to be spending. But clearly this car has got its original logos on, and it's got patina on it. We were looking particularly on the other side, weren't we, George? And you could see how over the years, just with cleaning and polishing, look, the graphics have worn through, and you can see that original patina. Now, all cars, the seals will perish. You can get replacement rubber seals. The other interesting thing, this in the 90s and the 80s, car theft was a problem as it is now. And one deterrent they did was they etched, and so all the numbers match on this car. All the windows are all etched. Everything's correct. The rear wheel arches are fine. Everything looks good here. The Achilles heel of these cars is the boot floor. So if we lift this up here, we will have a look under this. Careful with the plastic trim. You will see under here, look, the boot floor. Now you can buy the panels and it's not too complicated a job. The doors themselves, I mean, this is just surface rust on here. This is completely solid. So the doors look solid. All the lights have some small cracks. The rear bumper, it hasn't got its original rear bumper, so you would need to find an original. There's some of the plastic, so there should be a tray that goes on here for extra storage. That's broken. I think if you're looking at getting a really good Discovery 1, the interior is going to be the key. Some of the exterior parts you can find or repair with welding, but the interior plastics you're going to have to search hard. And what you'll notice is around areas where they're prone to leaking, the interiors have started to delaminate. Now some of this you can stick back, but it's going to need some work, and the cleaning is fine. And generally, look, considering this area here could be used as a load area, I think the seats are looking in remarkably good condition. The headlining sag, that's a standard feature. Ones with sunroofs may look nicer and have a little bit more light, but the risk of them leaking over the years and subsequent water damage is increased. Right, let's have a quick look and see what we can see underneath, George. You may have to pass the camera to me. Let's see if we've got enough light and have a look. So there's a lot of surface rust and there is signs of repairs on the seals. But generally, the underside, it's hard to say. You would need to get it up on some ramps. But you can see it's all complete there. But it would need a good clean. You can see, again, you can see if I open the door, you can see signs of where it's had plates welded in. And again, there's various bits of plastic missing here where you would have had the map pocket. And it's those bits that are going to be hard to find. So there we go. Some of these gutter trims apparently break. These gutter trims on this one look really good. Now, if you are buying a Discovery one, the ones that seem to hold their value are the earlier ones. The earlier ones you get, the 3 doors, do seem to hold their value better. Or going up in value more, should I say. The other ones are the G-WAC ones. So G at the start of the registration, then 3 numbers, and then WAC. They were the ones that were the press cars. And so a lot of people are after those because they were the original press launch fleet. And they have a certain, what's the word? Well, premium in terms of price. They're the ones that everyone, so if you've got an old Discovery one in the barn or the garage that's got a G something WAC, they're the ones to look for. Right, a couple of things I did promise to tell you. So a couple of weird things. So this was sold by Honda, believe it or not. They sold this in Japan as the Honda Crossroad in Japan. The other thing was they were going to call it the Prairie Rover. That would have been a bit odd, wouldn't it, George? Or the other one was the Highlander, which I think is something another make now use, the Highlander. I think Mitsubishi might have that one, yeah. Not sure. But I think the Discovery was a good name they chose. Now, one thing I thought I'd look up for fun, I'll put it on the screen now, is how many Discovery ones are left on the road in the UK. So you can go to the website, how many are left, and it will tell you. And I've looked up, of the 1989 models, there's only 7 left on the road, taxed and MOT'd at the moment. There are a few more on Sawn, not on the road. And of the 1990 models, there's just 18 on the road, MOT'd and taxed. So you can see these cars are disappearing fast. But doubtless because of their agricultural heritage, there are probably a lot of them left in barns and garages and stuff elsewhere. Right, let's have a look. Let's start the engine up and let's see what it sounds like if you want this car or you just want the nostalgia of that 200 TDI sound. Right, here we go. Right, you probably can't hear the sound because I had the microphone. Yeah, so if I look at the mileage, it's got 171,000 on the clock. And look at that, we've got a rev counter on it. So there we go, we're out of fuel nearly though, so we better be careful. So there we go, just a few more little insights into the Discovery One. Have you got an interest in Land Rover? Have you got a really cool Discovery One? Would you like us to waffle on about it? Let us know. Send us an email, contact us through our website or in the comments below. And we got half term this week, haven't we, George? So we could maybe come and see it. Right, let's just have a quick look at the Defender and them together. Let's put the bonnet down, George. Let's look side on. You know, some of these... Oh, look at that, it's all there. So luckily we've got 2 white cars. I mean, the front profile is not dissimilar. I mean, we've got this sort of grille bar design going across here and the front bumper. Move around the side, George. Let's have a look at the windscreen angles. There you go. Are they similar? Is the rake of the windscreen? It's quite similar with these A panels. And then the sitting position, as we move through, we've got the raised sitting position. And we get to the back, we've got the classic squared off back, okay, with the spare wheel. So I think we've got the lights mounted in a similar place. And obviously that's part Defender, that's part Discovery. So there we go. So you can see there is a DNA, there is a similarity running between. So there we go, Stig, we've taken you to see the other side of the family. Hope you've enjoyed our video. Subscribe, let us know what you want us to do. Have a good day.